Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October 27, 2020 special meeting of the Glendale City Council. Due to evolving situation with COVID-19 and health recommendations from the LA County Health Department, the Glendale City Council meeting will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. This meeting can be viewed on local cable, Charter, and Spectrum Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. You may also stream online through our website, www.glendaleca.gov, by scrolling all the way to the bottom of the web page and selecting live streaming, which is the third icon from the left. For public comments and questions, during the meeting, call 818-937-8100, which is on the screen. Please do not call in advance of the agenda item. With this being said, may I have roll call, please?
Here.
Devine,
Here, microphone.
Kasakian,
Yes, here. Your microphone is off, by the way.
Najarian, thank you.
here.
And Mayor
Turn on your
Agajanian.
microphone, Aram.
Turn on microphone.
It's on.
Present. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ajamian. What's next, please?
The agenda for the Tuesday, October 27th, 2020 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's next?
One would be community development regarding hearing introduction of amendments to Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995 regarding design review for projects in the DSP, murals, rebuilds following natural disaster, and related updates. One, introduction of an ordinance to GMC Section 30, 33, 230, 30.40.020, 30.41.015, 30.41.050, 30.47.020, 30.47.030, 30.47.040, 30.47.050, 30.47.070, 30.47.075, 30.47.090, 30.61.010 of Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995, case number PZC2013620.
Thank you. Interim City Manager, Mr. Golania.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Member City Council. I'm going to turn it over to Vilya Zamataitis, our principal planner, to walk you through the proposed amendments to the municipal code for your consideration. Thank you, Vilya.
Ms. Zimitaitis.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian, Mayor Agajanian, and council members. We have this afternoon before you a set of amendments related to design review changes, primarily in regards to projects in the DSP, in regards to murals, an update to rebuild design review exemption for residential projects that are demolished due to natural disasters, and other such code-related items. We do have a PowerPoint, so Mr. Ajamian, would you mind? Forgive me if you don't mind starting from the beginning.
Sure. I'll have it in the beginning. Here you go.
There you go. Thank you very much.
One more second. Hold on. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. The first set of amendments deals with design review in the DSP. Council, as part of your one-year update to the updated downtown-specific plan, indicated they wish to see changes to the design review process for projects in the downtown-specific plan. And so this direction comes from you from the July 7th, 2020 council meeting. The amendments to code include the elimination of all references to the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. The agency was abolished in 2008, I believe, and since that time, unfortunately, code continued to include references to the GRA, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and so those references will be eliminated. Now it's not moving forward.
Can we
And
do
I'm
it?
s- It's
Go ahead. Try it again.
There you go. Thank you. Technical difficulties. Also, the stage 1 and stage 2 review for DSP projects, this was part of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency submission review package. Those references were never actually codified, so we are taking this opportunity to actually codify the references stage 1, which would be preliminary conceptual review for project, and stage 2, which would be final review. Many projects recently have gone before City Council as a combined stage 1 and stage 2 review process. And as of late, council directed staff to proceed with a 2-stage review. So it would be a separate stage for preliminary conceptual review, which would essentially be a discussion on site planning and mass and scale, and then to review the final package as a separate individual review, stage 2 review. This would be for projects greater than 10,000 square feet in the downtown specific area. Projects that are less than 10,000 square feet would be administratively reviewed by our urban design studio staff and approved by the Director of Community Development. The 10,000 square foot threshold has not changed. That has been in code the last several decades. Council also directed the addition of a review, and this would be an advisory review by the Design Review Board between stages 1 and 2. So essentially, there would be a 3-stage process now for all larger projects in the downtown specific plan area. It would be stage 1 preliminary review, a design review, which would be an advisory review for recommendations and comments by the design review, and then back to City Council for a final review and approval. Second set of amendments deals with murals. Again, council reviewed a series of updates and comments from staff back in September, on September 15th, last month. And based on council's directions, staff is proposing amendments to transfer the design review authority from the Design Review Board to the Arts and Culture Commission. So all murals, and this would only be for murals on private property, would, instead of going to the Design Review Board for review and approval, would now be transferred to the Arts and Culture Commission. There would also be a 5-year time limit, and after which the applicant or the property owner could apply for an extended 5-year period, or they would have to remove the mural. There's also a clarification that artwork that is proposed on surfaces other than existing walls could be approved as a public art program, and this is specifically in regards to the upcoming art on the floor of the skate park. And last but not least, as part of that previous mural council meeting on September the 15th, there was discussion in terms of proposing a comprehensive mural program citywide, and that any future murals to mural standards would be brought back to City Council at a later date, once it's been compiled and vetted through the Arts and Culture Commission, the Parks, as well as the legal department. Subsequently, following council's discussion on murals, there were recommendations made by the city attorney, and this is in regards to First Amendment rights and First Amendment issues and clarifications. This would be to delete and modify certain mural standards that do not meet the content neutrality requirements of the First Amendment. This would be the freedom of speech. Currently, a mural must meet 6 standards that are codified as part of the mural review process. And again, at this point, at this juncture, the legal department is recommending, and the city attorney is recommending, that the prohibition of letters and numbers and symbols that is currently one of the standards be struck out, and that would in order to maintain that content neutrality so that the review body authority does not look at the content of the mural, which is prohibited under the First Amendment freedom of speech. Also, that the architectural compatibility standard be entirely struck out. And again, staff will be coming back at a later date with regards to standards to regulate the time, place, and manner, which is allowed by state law for content neutrality, but this would be coming back at a later date. Otherwise, the 5 amended standards would remain on if approved or adopted today.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Content neutrality. What's content neutrality? I'm trying to.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, so content neutrality, content neutral regulation is a regulation imposed on whether it's signage or art or First Amendment protected activity that it does not pertain to the content of the particular expression. So, letters, regulations relating to letters or numbers that is relative to content. Not content neutral regulations would be things like regulating maybe the size or the height or particular locations of signage, materials used to the extent that those materials relate to a content neutral reason. For example, if you wanted to ban materials that might be flammable or hazardous, you could do that. But if you wanted to regulate a particular type of material that is reflective of the artist's work, it might be a thornier issue. So those are content neutral as a regulation that does not pertain to the content of the particular expression at hand.
To continue, staff had a suggested amendment related to design review board requirements for projects in residential structures such as single-family homes and duplexes, apartment buildings that are demolished due to natural disaster, being fire, earthquake, flood. Currently, the code requires that such projects, if they want to be rebuilt, must go through the design review board process. That is it has a timeline, 3 to 4 month minimum. There's a filing application fee associated with that, a checklist of items that need to be submitted. Yet in this case, staff is suggesting an amendment that if a project is going to be substantially rebuilt in the same location, the same square footage, essentially the same type of design, that project would not have to go through the design review board process, but would be able to be exempted from design review. And last but not least, there are just a miscellaneous cleanup items as they relate to any type of Glendale Redevelopment Agency references, the Stage 1 and Stage 2, new modifications and standards, and any type of procedures related to the actual design review of DSP projects. The matter was presented to the Planning Commission, at which time they voted to recommend to City Council to adopt the amendments, and they did so unanimously. 2 of the commissioners included comments. Those comments are attached in the motion as the Planning Commission's motion attached to your staff report. Those included that updates be provided of all DSP projects, and this was suggested by Commissioner Lee, and that is something that we can easily do in terms of a staff updates during the Planning Commission meetings to update the Planning Commission regarding any and all proposed projects in the DSP of larger nature. Second item was to empower commissions with decision-making purview in the DSP, except when such reviews would add to the timeline, essentially delaying the approval process and result in any other type of delays as well. Now, this was a suggestion, and we've heard this also in regards to council comments at prior discussions. Currently, the council is charged with reviewing projects in the DSP The planning hearing officer is charged with reviewing discretionary permits such as variances and parking reductions, except when those type of entitlements are bundled. So in the case of DSP projects, any requested variances or any type of parking reductions are actually brought forth together with the design review package for city council. So you are ultimately the review authority for discretionary permits. The planning commission actually comes in when there is a development agreement for a larger project in the downtown specific plan, or if there is a rezoning effort that's required as part of the project. The planning commission does not have any review authority or any purview of any other type of planning entitlements at this juncture. So that is something that would be proposed if the council wishes. That would be a different approach completely from what is the current process today. The set of amendments are exempt from CEQA. There is no significant effect on the environment with the adoption, and it only involves minor changes to land use regulations. No physical changes to the environment are proposed, so it is exempt. Staff's recommendation is that the City Council adopt the design review related amendments to the zoning code, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there any, do we have any phone calls?
Mayor, we do not.
We do not. So, okay. My colleagues, they want to comment on this issue?
I have, Mayor.
Ms. Devine.
Thank you very much. Velia, can I ask you about the administrative review of a development less than 10,000 square feet? Can you tell me why they don't have to go, why we shouldn't send them to design review as well? What's the rationale behind that I guess council recommended? I don't remember that.
Yes, Councilmember Devine. The administrative review of projects that are less than 1,000 square feet is something that has been codified for a number of decades. At the time, council felt that smaller projects, working in conjunction with our urban design studio staff and the planning department staff, would be smaller enough in scale and less of an impact to the overall downtown specific plan streetscape and whatnot. So they would be allowed to go through an administrative process that is very similar to what we have currently regarding additions to single-family homes, smaller multifamily residential projects less than 6 units. So this is not something out of the ordinary, and it has been in place for smaller projects for a number of decades.
Do we have an extraordinary number of these projects, smaller?
That I can think of that come to mind, actually, we've only had 2 in the last year that I know of. So it's a very limited amount. Most projects are much larger than that.
Well, I don't know if my colleagues would agree, but I'd like to see that taken out and have all projects in the DSP go to DRB and none be subject to administrative review. I'll leave that on the table.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, unless you want to finish, you have some other things.
I do.
Okay.
Okay, all right. My second concern is with the design review for projects demolished due to natural disasters. I just feel that whether, no matter how they're damaged, they're going to be rebuilt, they should go through design review. So I'm thinking that maybe my suggestion was to have them go through design review, but not they would not be subject to a fee. But as I understand it, there is a check and balance in this this consideration. Can you explain that to us, Velia?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to. We essentially, when it comes to, for instance, a fire demolished structure, we look at existing building records on site, if there are available plans. If the project went through a previous design review board, we would have those plans on record. We also compare those to the LA County tax assessor records. Those records usually indicate the building footprint and the square footages. So there is a definite checks and balance with regards to assessing the actual square footage and also the location on site. We take a look at aerial photography, if there are any recent sales, those photographs and notations in such items such Redfin and Zillow. We compare all of those documents and we assess what is existing out there today. The project would still have to go through the permit process. So during the permit process, that's when planning division would get involved. We would assess the building records again as noted, and also the building codes, the fire codes, and it would be completely vetted. It just would not have to go through the design review process, which again, there's costs associated with that. There's also a definite time delay associated with that. So if they are rebuilding exactly what is out there currently today in terms of the location, the square footage, and the design, they would be able to go ahead and have an exemption from the design review requirement.
Okay, so in other words, there are several stages of review that to ensure that they rebuild it exactly. And if they change, they then will have to go to design review.
Correct. Any addition that they would propose as part of a new project or a change in design, that would trigger design review board review.
Okay, well, that's good. I feel better about that. And I did have a question about the Planning Commission review, that second bullet point where they would, how did you phrase it? They would further empower the Planning Commission with decision-making purview in the DSP. And that was for two issues you said. One was zoning and the other...
Board Member Devine, or Council Member Devine, no, that was just one comment made by the chair of the Planning Commission. It would just be to empower the Planning Commission with more review authority for projects in the DSP, so long as it doesn't delay or draw out the timeline. Now, again, staff at this point wonders where that ultimate review, additional review would come in, because the design review board and the city council, the design review board is, their area of expertise is to assess the design. So if a project is coming in, is completely compliant with code, with all of the DSP standards, no variances are proposed, no parking reductions, and we're only looking at the design review of the project, you are already going through a 3-stage process with preliminary review by city council, advisory review by the design review board, and then a final review by city council. So in terms of actually having planning commission review with a code compliant project, I'm not sure where that additional review what it would be assessed.
Yeah, I don't understand what they're asking for, so I'll leave that one out there too for discussion by my colleagues.
Ms. Devine,
Yes.
it was a little bit, it wasn't really clear whether the chair was suggesting that boards and commissions should, in general, be empowered with more authority, so long as they don't draw that out. Again, as Ms. Semititis had said, in the design review process, which was in front of them, staff's not sure, number one, where they would fit in, or number two, if you did put another hearing in front of the Planning Commission, you would stretch that timeline out, which is something that the chair had said he wasn't in favor of. That's one issue. The second issue would be you would be adding a third review, if you will, board. And while you rely on the design review board for their expertise, you would have another commission providing input, and I don't want to say further clouding the issue, but there is the potential for 3 different viewpoints on it. And whether that's a good thing for design, or whether it just complicates the matter and draws things out is a policy question for the council.
Thank you. I just, and this is my last comment, I just want to make sure that for the project that demolished due to natural disasters, that we make sure that the verbiage is in there, that they will have to do, that the process is still going to be there for building and safety planning and all of the steps, the review steps that they'll have to go through.
Those are already included in our process and in our code. As they go into building and safety, planning does a check to make sure that what is submitted to building and safety to be built and the permit issued on is the same as what was approved in design review. And in this case, planning staff would be looking at the former design, the new design, making sure that it's substantially the same. And then they would give the exemption. That would be double checked again when construction plans come in for plan check.
Okay.
And that's
there's
already part of our process.
So there's no verbiage necessary in this?
Correct.
This one. Okay, all right. Just so it's understood by everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Mr. Botman.
Yeah. I want to follow up on a few of the points that Councilmember Devine raised, because I also noticed that 10,000 square foot cutoff, and I just hadn't picked it up when we discussed this in July. So what I think would, and I support the idea, by the way, of taking design review decisions for those smaller projects and putting them in the design review board's authority. I would actually say in those cases, we should make the design review board the ultimate design review authority. So those smaller projects can go through design review, don't have to come to council unless, of course, they're appealed. And I think that would make sense. So we're not increasing the flow of traffic into the council, but we are getting design review board looking at those projects. So that's what I would support, unless there's something I'm not thinking about on that. And then on this point about the planning commission's role. So, Billy, if I understand what you said, so if it's a zoning change, if it's a development agreement in the DSP, it would go through the planning commission.
That is correct, yes.
Right. Now, if it is something that is not necessarily a design issue, but it's a code compliance issue, like you mentioned parking. So if there's a parking variance, that you're saying would not go through the planning commission. That would be taken up by council and the DRB. Is that right?
That would be bundled with the entitlements and brought before the city council as under your review authority.
Okay, so that's where, I have a little question mark. It's not a big issue, but because what you said made sense about, design review board, they do design. There's really no reason to have a second body look at design issues. But how about something like a parking variance? That's not a design issue per se, right? And so I just have a question as to whether we might want to consider putting these things that are not design related, that require some kind of a variance through the planning commission. I'm not, insisting on or anything. I just, to the extent possible, I want to kind of see the planning commission play its normal role, whether it's in the DSP or out of the DSP. I have a sense, and maybe this is where Taraktian might have, been thinking, because he and I have talked about this, generally just an idea that the planning commission seems not to have a very significant workload, and it would be good to have them, do more and take some of that off of council. So I just put that out and see what my colleagues think about that. And that's all I have, I think.
Thank you. Mr.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just to respond to Mr. Brotman, some background for the council. Both the 10,000 square feet and the bundling of variances and whatnot with the design review, the purpose of that was to streamline those things that could be handled more administratively and not create another step, because at the time that the council had made those decisions, there was a lot of activity and things were getting backed up. And people were wondering, when can I get on the agenda? Now, we certainly don't have the volume that we did in the past, but the idea for you, again, as a policy is, do you want to put those processes in place for those boards and commissions in lieu of some kind of streamline? And again, that's background for you as you deliberate that question.
Right, and if I could just continue on that, yeah, because there's so few of these cases, and because of the importance of the location. I know these are small, but they are in our downtown, and that's why we have council act as the design review authority, because of the location. So I would suggest that we try that and have those smaller items. Smaller items, under 10,000 square foot, go through design review board, and then just stop there.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Brotman, also just to clarify, such items as variances and parking reductions would actually go before the planning hearing officer under current code and not the planning commission.
You mean for all projects or for DSP or?
For all projects citywide, the planning hearing officer is the review authority for discretionary permits such as variances, parking reductions, conditional use permits.
Okay, and then it would go to the planning commission only if there's an appeal at
Correct.
that point, right?
Yes, only on appeal.
Okay, and so in the DSP if there's, well, let's see. So how would it work in the DSP then? But let's say a parking variance. So planning hearing officer would look at it or no?
No, at this point in time, it is still bundled with the design review package before the city council. As part of, as Mr. Lanzafame just mentioned, for the sake of ease and streamlining, the entire package is brought before the city council for consideration.
Okay, so if we did this change for below 10,000 square feet, then that item would go before the DRB.
For a code compliant project, it would go before the design review board. And if there are any discretionary permits, it would then go before the planning hearing officer. But at this point in time, the way the code is written today, it actually goes through our urban design studio staff for review and is ultimately, it is publicly noticed. So administrative review processes for DRB related to projects less than 10,000 square feet, it's noticed as any other design review project. All the occupants and property owners within 500 feet are notified. There is a staff report that's written and uploaded onto our city's website. We take comments, we take letters and testimony, and if there is no opposition, then it's just administratively approved by the Director of Community Development and Housing.
Okay. Anyway, I still support making that change below 10,000 square feet if there's if other colleagues do as well.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian.
Yes, thank you. I like these recommendations. However, I do think that if we are trying to improve the role and encourage our boards and commissions to be taking on more of the work to lighten the load for us, I also would like to see some of the review process be deferred to them, including items, projects that are less than 10,000 feet. Now, the issue with that partly is that you live and die by what these boards and commissions decide. And when you have good councils that make good appointments in the eyes of the public or whoever is the judge, everything is fine. But when the council shifts and there's new faces and new appointments, it doesn't always work to satisfy all parties, which is one of the reasons why I would like to see us review. And I know that council did this not too long ago, but I would like us in time to review and revisit our council commission appointments so that our commissions don't become proxies of city council bodies. We all have our competing issues or interests right here, but more or less, we get along and we work together and we get accomplish a lot for the city because of the one-to-one appointment process that was initiated. Now the boards become direct reflections of the council, whereas before 2 council members had to agree on an appointment. But anyways, I digress. I do think that the 10,000 square foot, less than 10,000 square foot project should be reviewed by commissions, and as well as let me just quickly go through this. On murals, I'm fine with the recommendations. I look forward to seeing what our comprehensive plan will be. I do think that the less, if we can eliminate design review board from that process, it's a net gain for the arts, for the overall process here in the city. And on the issue of structures or buildings that are damaged in the course of natural disaster, I think this is a good cleanup for our code, because this was one of the issues that was brought to my attention by a family that had lost a home in a fire, and they were trying to rebuild it, and there appeared to be some sort of conflict in the code that wasn't allowing them, because they had to rebuild the entire structure. And in the eyes of some, and I think staff's interpretation, it was seen as a new build, which it really wasn't. They were building the exact same home in the same square footage, a slightly higher roof, possibly a changing of stairways here or there, but it's not like they were adding anything to the property. They were just rebuilding a home that had been lost in a tragedy. And so they had been encountering some delays. And when I looked at the code, I found that there was, at least in a layperson's interpretation, some questions about it. So I'm glad that we're doing this. I think it should make it very clear that if you lose your home in a natural disaster and you're trying to rebuild it in the exact same fashion, you should be able to do it without much heartache and headache and hardship, at least from the city's side. So with that, those are my thoughts on this. I support them. I would like to see, however, our planning commissions empowered to take on more of our tasks. I would like to add to that and say, we are expected oftentimes as council people to be policy experts in all areas, and it's really impossible to do that, which is why we have boards and commissions to help us out. We appoint people that we believe are professionals who are passionate about that particular subject area, and we will rely on their advice. For us to sit and become experts in every project area is nearly impossible. Even with my years of involvement in city government, I find myself oftentimes feeling like I'm cramming for a final for every single one of these reports as I try to become more and better informed on the nuances of it, which is why we have staff, which is why we have boards and commissions. So I would like to defer more of the authority and guidance to them and rely on them. Thank you.
Mr. Najarian. Councilmember Najarian. Councilmember Najarian.
Mr. Mayor, I'm having some,
You're okay now?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
I'm having some technical difficulties here. I had a discussion with staff and went over these amendments. I'm okay with staff's recommendation for all of them. I'm not ready to discuss the under 10,000 square feet issue, because I think we need to have some more context to that and see what kind of projects and proposals would be affected by that. I think I know what sort of projects there are, but I would like to get more information from staff. I'm not a big fan of giving final authority, expanding the role of commissions to get final authority for decision-making and entitlements. I think eventually it has to be a city council decision, whether we're experts in it or not. I think we carry with it a certain balance and broader view of the issues than a commissioner would. And although we have each appointed a commissioner for most of the commissions, the issue that comes before them might not necessarily be in their field of expertise, because commissions have also a wide variety of cases that come before them, whether you're an urban planner or a transportation planner or an engineer or whatever. Coming before the planning commission doesn't mean that you've got 5 experts in that field that is on the issue that's coming before them. So I would rather not start expanding powers of the commissions, because I think they're there for general advice, except for the instances set forth in the code and the charter. I think they're there for general advice to the city council, and I appreciate their work, but I'm not necessarily ready to cede my duties as a councilman to them.
Thank you. I, as a professional engineer, I've been involved with buildings, and anytime you delay a construction or getting approval for the design, means we are adding cost to that building, because they bought a property, they have engineers and architects working on a project. As longer it takes, it costs lots of money to the project owner. So we have to consider that too. I mean, we are just talking about to add conditions, obligations, and this prolongs the project, means money. Sometimes I hear from those who have projects in front of the council or commissioners, they say, oh, the commissioner, there were not 3 commissioners, it has been delayed. And this person should wait for months and months to get the project to be reviewed. So that's why I don't like to add all layers and conditions to this. But however, a few items which are here is about the 10,000, less than 10,000, to have, not to have stage 1 and 2, I am okay with it, however. And about a building which was damaged or through the fire, or I don't know if other natural disasters also is part of this, or just the fire is part of it, that if they're gonna build same building, they're okay to go ahead and do it. Is natural disaster part of it too?
Yes, fire, whether it's a brush fire or a kitchen fire or something, if it burns down, earthquake, flooding.
Okay. So then
those
I'm
things.
okay with it, that they just, if they're building the same project, I mean, if what is in there, I guess I'm okay. The height, maybe they want to raise the height of the building, I have no problem with it. But however, I mean, reasonably, because there are older buildings that hardly they're 8 foot high ceiling, maybe. If they want a new building, they want to raise it a little bit reasonably to raise the height of the building. I'd be okay with it, like 10% or 15% higher. That I'm okay with it. I don't know if it's part of it's not part of this, but I'm recommending. But if, as long as they're making the same building or the same design and the same quality, basically. The other issue, I would like to have the final authority to keep it with City Council. I just don't want to leave it to some other groups or commissioners, and that's basically it. But I just want to make it, to come up with some ideas to make things simpler. I mean, it's not adding layers, conditions, obligations. All the time we are talking about this. We are not looking at the building owner that wants to bring to their building to fruition as fast as possible, because every day it costs, the building become more expensive. Anyway, thank you. That's my comment about this. Yeah, okay. Now, what we do, we go to, do you have enough direction to continue on this?
Should I introduce the ordinance?
We do not have callers.
1 second, do we have phone call?
We do not have callers.
Okay, all right.
So can I make a suggestion then?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay,
Suggest.
that we introduce the ordinance with these changes, that if a building is less than 10,000 square feet, it goes to design review, and to eliminate in the planning commission review, the second bullet point, to provide them with decision-making purview.
That's
Does
not,
Yes,
Does that
Council,
make sense?
Councilmember Devine, the change with regards to the 10,000 square foot rule is something that we can easily amend before it is brought back to you for adoption. The comment made by one of the planning commissioners is not something that needs to be decided unless the city council so wishes to amend the review authority of planning commission.
Oh, okay, then I'll just, with that one amendment, I'll introduce the ordinance.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that one change, my understanding, was not discussed by the planning commission. Is that correct?
no, it was.
That was not.
So that particular modification would need to go back, this ordinance would need to go back to the planning commission if the council would wish to make that change. Or the council can introduce it as is, adopt it, and then initiate a change to make that additional change. So there's a provision of the government code that provides when we're changing our zoning regulations, and those changes have not been considered by the planning commission, then they need to be, any modification made between the planning commission and the council stage would need to go back to the planning commission. So the way I'm reading it now, the council would have two choices: to introduce it as it is now and then adopt it, or refer this back to the planning commission for consideration of that particular change.
And we're talking about the 10,000 square feet?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll introduce the ordinance
As it is, as it has been introduced.
as it is, and then we can bring it back after it goes
All
to
right.
planning.
Okay, is there a second?
Well, if I'm,
Don't need a second.
couple of things. So it doesn't need a second, but if council has additional comments, we heard the comments, but I think if there's any objections to how it is introduced, we probably need to hear that. Council can certainly make changes, but they have to be within changes with changes that were considered by the planning commission at some level. And I understand most of this was, but the 10,000 square foot change was not something that was considered by the planning commission.
No, but if we leave it the way it is, that has been introduced here with that item of,
Correct. I think what I'm saying is the staff would like to hear if there are any other comments or directions before we bring back the final ordinance for adoption.
Yes, I have a comment.
yes, go ahead, Mr. Broad.
Yeah, well, it seems to me it might be more streamlined if we just take it back to the planning commission for this change and then introduce the ordinance and then adopt it. Otherwise, if we introduce now, we have to come back to adopt, right? Then we have to take something to the planning commission, then we're going to still have to go through an introduction and an adoption again, right?
Correct. But again, we would need to,
Straightforward, just to take this back to the next planning commission meeting, should be a very simple thing. And then bring it back here.
the council would need to direct us to do that.
Now,
I would prefer that, but
anybody else has any comments, Mr. Najarian, Kasakian?
Yeah, I mean, just one clear, we're talking about that 10,000 feet exemption, if you will, from council review.
No.
Is that correct?
It's removing the 10,000 square foot exemption that currently goes to the Director of Community Development and requiring it to go to the design, those projects to go to the design review board. That's the suggestion.
That's the issue, right, the 10,000.
All of
I just want to see I need more information on it because I need to see what's been done in the past. Give us some examples of 10,000 square feet that have been approved. Are they controversial? Are they so de minimis that it doesn't need to go to the design review board? So I'd like more information on that. I don't have a problem with keeping this as one big ball of issues, but that's.
What
Mayor?
I'm sorry, what I'm surprised at, this 10,000 square feet building in DSP is rare. Who's coming now in DSP to do 10,000 square foot building? I mean, why we got stuck on this, I don't know. This is, as it has been said, for past year, entire year, there was only 2 projects. And then we got stuck on this. So let it go the way it is. Yes, Ms. Zimataitis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Agajanian. An example would be the House of Pies that is proposed on the corner of Colorado and Glendale that went through a facade remodel that is much more ornate than the current one-story strip mall. Because we are unable to exempt that, and mind you, these are not exemptions from the design review. These are administrative design review. They submit a full design review packet that is vetted by our Urban Design Studio staff. We take a look at the downtown specific plan standards. Does it meet it or not? There is a staff report written in the case of the new House of Pies remodel. It was very architecturally and engineering wise ornate. It was publicly noticed. There was a staff report. We had received a number of comments, mostly in support of the project, and ultimately it was then approved by the director, and it proceeds forward into plan check. Those would be the type of projects that would go under administrative design review that are less than 10,000 square feet. It would be the simple additions such as extending a structure along Brand Boulevard, and for instance, a restaurant needs an additional, they would need a walk-in refrigerator and cooler and additional dishwasher. Well, if they are expanding, let's say at the rear, 2,000, 3,000 square feet, not a large addition, but an addition nonetheless, those type of projects would then go through the administrative design review as opposed to going through the actual design review board. These would be for smaller scale projects in the downtown specific plan in compliance with the DSP standards.
And that's what I hear all the time, that it gets such a long time to get approval on any project in Glendale. And that's the complaint of all contractors, developers, the owner of the properties. It takes a long time, and that becomes more costly. So I don't want to get stuck with this 10,000 square foot matter.
Well, if I may, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you talk about getting stuck. The one that I'm objecting to is the layering on of the commission purview, decision-making, et cetera. The 10,000 square foot omission, in other words, if the building's under 10,000, it doesn't really matter what the size is. It has to be compatible with the buildings that are surrounding it and in that area. And that's why, and there are only 2. So it's not like we're increasing or causing a huge negative impact to a lot of people. Not a whole lot of buildings are. However, I think it's important. A building is a building is a building, and it should go through our process, no matter what the size. And that's the reason that I'm kind of being a proponent for this change.
No, but what they are saying, it's going through review. The city staff is going through it because I know this. I've been through this. It goes through the staff. It takes a long time. By the time they come up with their comments, you take it back to the architect. You take it back to the engineers and coming back again, back and forth, and the property owner is paying interest, is paying, it's costly to wait, to go through these committees and groups and through city staff. It takes such a long time. We are talking about money. Anyway, so where we
Excuse
are
me.
now.
Mr. Mayor?
I think
Yes. Oh, 1 second, Mr. Phil Lanzafame wanted to say something about this.
I was going to answer your question.
Yeah.
Ms. Devine has introduced the ordinance as is.
Okay.
I think that implied in that was that she would like to then see staff or have the council initiate the the change for the 10,000 square feet. This would also give us an opportunity to present the information that Councilman Najarian has asked for separately and have these other things move forward at this time. I think that's where we are. And then Mr. Brotman had another comment.
Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Bratton.
if I could, yeah, I'm, if everybody wants to do it that way, I'm okay with that. I just do want to see that item come back, with regards to the 10,000 square feet. But if you think it's a more streamlined process to introduce this ordinance as is now and come back, and I understand that would give us an opportunity to address Councilmember Najarian's concern, so maybe that is a better way to do it. I also just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to do anything to slow down a process and increase costs to developers, but to me, what's more important than the cost of the developers is the quality of the design. And in our downtown, I want to make sure we have the highest quality design. To me, that comes first. So that's why I think this is important. And I think, we want to try to create a balance, of course. But my concern is not solely on the profits of the developers.
Expenses of developers.
Or the expenses. My first concern is quality of design.
Because eventually they whether rent it or sell it, so it passes to the general public. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Eventually that the small store owner, that renter, whoever, has to pay more because developer spends more. They don't take the load of it. They pass it to the smaller business owner or renter or property buyer or condo buyer. Anyway, so what we do now, Mr. Garcia?
As Mr. Lansfame noted, Mr. Mayor, the item's been introduced. We'll bring back the ordinance for adoption for next week's agenda.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, may I have a motion to adjourn? No.
Yes.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, with that said, the meeting is adjourned at 3:03 p.m. Thank you, Ms. Devine.
Mr. Mayor, Housing
Yes.
Authority Chair Devine, could we please have a short recess? We're having some audio issues with one of our council
Okay.
members' computer, please.
We are taking 15 minutes recess, I guess, whether I'm saying or